Hi, Diana. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Sharon. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
I'm so excited to talk to you today. Just shortly, I want to introduce you, Diana. Diana is an evolutionary astrologer and spiritual coach. It's the second time she's on the podcast, and it's really a beautiful time to speak now as we've just had the new moon in Scorpio last week. And in the upcoming week, we're going to have a lunar eclipse in Taurus, which will be the first one in the series of eclipses with Taurus and Scorpio. So we are actually preparing for an online ceremony or gathering that we will host on the 19th of November. So next Friday, to celebrate this eclipse. And this episode is a lot to talk about what's coming up for us and what eclipses really are, and what the north node and south node of the moon is, and how this phase of the moon is so significant. So I want to welcome you back, Diana, and I would love for you to also introduce yourself to the listeners that might have not listened to our first podcast together.
Sure. Thank you so much for that introduction. So my name is Diana Westley, and as Sharon noted, I'm an evolutionary astrologer and a spiritual coach. But evolutionary astrology actually has very strong ties to the eclipses because it focuses on these 2 points in the sky that are linked to the moon. It's called the north and the south node of the moon. And it tells us something about kind of where we're coming from entering into this life, our default patterns and tendencies, our karma. So kind of this point that tells us all about our past lifetimes, all about where our soul has been on its journey, along with this opposing point called the north node of the moon that tells us something about our dharma, what we're growing toward in this lifetime. And so my work is very much focused around our soul's journey. And it's not limited to this lifetime per se. If the idea of multiple lifetimes feels a little bit foreign, then you can think about it as kind of just our default patterns entering into this life, who we are when we're young, and also kind of our growth opportunities and what we're evolving toward over the course of this lifetime. But that's kind of the basis of the work I do, is looking at the stars, looking at the planets, the celestial bodies, and helping people understand their evolutionary path, get unstuck by understanding kind of who they are, where they're likely to get stuck or caught in kind of self-imposed cages, how to get around those things, and how to continue growing. So that's the majority of my work. And again, I'll talk more about eclipses, but eclipses are very key to understanding our soul's growth, our soul's journey, and at specific and unique points in time when we have these eclipse seasons, there is this opportunity for major growth toward our destiny through the process of release and consciousness shifts and so on. So that's a lot, but I'll turn it back over to Sharon to introduce a bit more about what we're going to be talking about today. Thank you again for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for introducing the topic so well. And it's really interesting. And I think that when I discovered this, it made so much sense to me, both individually and as a collective, like what our focus and our almost our leading star is, and what we have to work with releasing in order to grow in this life. So I really love this concept in astrology, and think it's so interesting with evolutionary astrology. Like you said, it's about like many lifetimes and how we're evolving as souls. So it's really a bigger perspective. And I think that, I mean, the eclipses have been so important in ancient times because it's so usually now we're going to have a partial eclipse. When there is an eclipse of the moon and the sun, it's very visible, and there's so much mythology around what the eclipses are and mean, and what the gods were saying, and what were the rituals and ceremonies around these time periods, and how also ancient civilizations started to predict the eclipses, which I find so interesting, how far back we have knowledge of that. So it is auspicious time for many ancient cultures, and I think that in our evening together, when we're gonna talk about the astrology of this major event, and especially since it's going to be shifting as well, and we will get into this, but as we're shifting, this shift will happen on a collective level and as individuals as well, of course. So I'm really looking forward to that, and getting into some like goddess stories, meditation, other practices that we will do together to really harness this energy that we are being given, and not being unaware of it. So it's not just happening to us, we're like co-creating with the moon, with the universe. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I think the first thing, just like a basic thing, would be nice for people, since we're talking about the North Node and South Node, maybe for those that haven't gotten into astrology that much but are interested, maybe we can start there. What are those points?
Yeah, so I'm not an astronomer, but I'd like to try and offer a quick visualization of what the North and South Node are, and also how they're kind of tied in with eclipses. And so basically, the Earth has this orbit around the sun, this plane that it creates as it moves around the sun. And then the moon is orbiting the Earth. And when the orbit of the moon crosses the orbit of the Earth around the sun, there's these 2 points. And when there's a new or a full moon in those 2 points, again, of the moon's orbit kind of crossing the Earth's orbit around the sun, then we can have eclipses. And so if it's a full moon, then we end up with a lunar eclipse like the one we have coming up. And basically with a lunar eclipse, the Earth casts a shadow on the moon from the sun. So the Earth is between the sun and the moon and is casting the shadow on the moon. And with a solar eclipse, this happens during a new moon. And so in this case, the moon is between the Earth and the sun, and it's casting a shadow on the Earth. And so when we think about it that way, there was definitely a lot of reverence, as Sharon brought up, for eclipses in ancient cultures. But I think there was also a lot of fear, because it was this time of shadow, of darkness, or kind of increased darkness. And when we think about the North and the South Node, the North and South Node are actually those 2 points as well. It's the points in the sky where, again, the moon's orbit is crossing this Earth's plane, this orbit around the sun. And so they're changing over time. They change signs. They're always exactly opposite each other in this kind of, polarity. And the kind of idea there is that, as the moon is descending over this orbit, or over this plane of the Earth, then we have this South Node. And so this descending action, this entry into the shadows, into the underworld, tells us something about, again, where we're coming from. The South Node tells us about our past lives. It tells us about the shadows that we carry into this lifetime as well, the fears, the challenges, the struggles. It's an area where we can find ourselves feeling really stuck, and burned out and resentful, but it's also our default mode. So it's comfortably uncomfortable. It's something that we've really overplayed, really overdone. And so in astrology, you can find the South Node and the North Node by looking at, your birth chart. There's lots of different tools you can use to find that for free. The South Node is usually represented by this little upside down horseshoe symbol, and it's also called the descending node. And then the North Node is telling us something about, again, those evolutionary growth opportunities. It's always this exact counterbalance to the South Node. And the North Node tells us something about, what our soul needs in this lifetime, what actions, what qualities, what traits it needs to develop in order to continue its evolution, move into a new level of consciousness, and so on. And so, because these 2 points, the North and South Node, are also the points at which we have eclipses, when we have a new or full moon near the North and South Node in the sky, these 2 celestial points, we have an eclipse. And so there's this added energy with eclipses of destiny, of karma, of releasing these South Node patterns and tendencies, both collective ones and also personal and individual ones. And there's also this opportunity to kind of supercharge our growth toward our dharma, toward our kind of destined path, to really get in touch with what it is that our soul is yearning to do and be and become and create. This process of unfolding is kind of heightened during eclipses. And so again, because the North and South Node, this point of the past, of release, and the North Node, this point of growth and movement and forward momentum, are tied up in eclipses. The eclipse energy that we work with is often this mix of, we really have to let something go in order for something new to come. Something has to die for something new to be born. And so that's kind of the basic idea there. And if the astronomy is a little bit complex to understand, just kind of hearing it or to visualize, there's also lots of great graphics out there that a quick Google search will help with. But having kind of that visual can help you understand just that linkage there, and why the importance of kind of that North and the South Node of these eclipses is so key in understanding ourselves and understanding our growth opportunities and so on. Yeah, I'll pause there.
Great to get that understanding, I think, and to see that it's a part of our life and of this cycle of life and lives. So, and understanding also what we're looking at, because when we look at the universe, we can almost feel like it's external from us and something we're observing, but everything we observe out there is observed within us, and there's no real distance or separation. It's within us. So we just have these tools to understand what shifts we are working with, because we are cyclical and things are changing all the time, and the nodes change not too often but quite often. And we're in that period now where we are shifting. So maybe if you speak about how the North and South Node has affected us as a collective up until now, up until we're shifting into the Taurus Scorpio, how would you say it's been like manifesting in the world?
Oh, that's a great question. So we've had the North Node, so this evolutionary growth opportunity in Gemini, and we've had the South Node in Sagittarius for almost 18 months now. The nodes change signs every year and a half or so. And it'll change signs again in January of 2022. So that's kind of this shift that we're preparing for with this current eclipse season, kind of releasing the old polarity of Gemini and Sagittarius and moving into this new polarity of working with Taurus and Scorpio. But over the past 17 16 months of the Gemini Sagittarius nodal axis, we've really seen a lot of growth and opportunity to grow toward open-mindedness. So Gemini is a sign associated with curiosity, with asking questions, with listening deeply. Gemini wants to gather all of the facts. It doesn't want to just jump to a conclusion, declare a truth. It tends to be kind of opposed to dogma, to anything that's too hard and fast. And it really understands complexity, human complexity, emotional complexity, moral complexity, because it can see every shade of gray. There's no black and white thinking with Gemini. There's only the shades of gray in between. And so all of us have been kind of called to get closer to others, to ask questions of them, to open our minds to new perspectives, to new truths, and to release any attachment to an ultimate truth that fits all people at all times. And so when we think about the South Node in Sagittarius, kind of this where we're coming from collectively right now, what we have an opportunity to revisit, reevaluate, and release. This would be shadow Sagittarius. This is being self-righteous, dogmatic, polarizing in our beliefs. This is beliefs and belief systems and ideologies that really play on our emotions in a way that can feel almost manipulative sometimes. And so it's been asking us to recognize when we've become too emotional about a belief. Again, the moon in astrology rules our emotions and our emotional nature. So the north and the south node of the moon are also tied into emotions and our emotional body. Eclipses are tied into our emotions and our emotional body. And so with Sagittarius as the south node, if we find ourselves getting really emotional, really impassioned, really upset, deeply emotionally unsettled by someone else's perspective, viewpoint, belief, whatever it may be, truth, we're asked to kind of, calm ourselves. Gemini is a very objective, very rational placement for the North Node. And so it's asking us to kind of quiet and calm the fire of our emotions, fire being Sagittarius, so that we can open our minds, clear our minds, and get closer to those we disagree with, get closer to the issues, build bridges rather than burning them down. So this is very much the energy we're working with. It's been a very polarizing time, to be honest. So that's definitely shadow Sagittarius. But the more polarized things become, the more people want to try to build those bridges and meet in the middle. The more we have some people really championing the spice of life through diversity, and encouraging new perspectives, multiple perspectives, wanting to meet in the middle. And so we've definitely seen kind of a mix of both. So that's some of the energy that we have been working with. Do you have any more thoughts on that, Sharon, from your experience and what you've seen with this nodal axis?
Yeah, I think the themes are exactly what you said, and it's like the past few years when the nodes have shifted. I've seen very clear themes like into what is going on in the world, and Gemini being so somehow related also to like real information and not like just beliefs and old beliefs that we might have, and wanting to have more answers, and being able to research yourself, and being more like curious, and being I think that, and especially like we've seen how communication tools have grown even stronger, and everything that has to do with Gemini has been just evolving and becoming bigger in the world, and technology and social media and other tools, as we mentioned before as well. So I think that it's on a collective level very clear, yeah, it's about learning so that we can like also evolve our mind. It's about like some kind of merging between that axis, like merging the higher wisdom with what we can work with here in the more tangible. So it's like a balance that really needed to be done. And what I find is so beautiful from this place of being mind and wisdom oriented, we now we'll move into the more embodiment and the feminine, I think, because now as we're moving into Taurus, it's going to be like, I mean, it's more Venusian, and then we have the Scorpio deep. So maybe we can get into that now, because why we feel like next week's full moon is so important, and this shift of the nodes are important, is because we're entering a stage in our evolution and in the collective evolution where our focus will be completely different. And I think that the months that are coming up after this eclipse will be so life-changing for so many people, and the way we operate as a collective as well, and moving into again this more feminine based sign and earthy sign, and everything that Taurus has to do with. I think that's going to be beautiful to see, because we're also like in Cancer not too long ago as a collective moving into that, and I felt that nurturing. So how do you see, like, why is this time important now with the upcoming eclipse, and what are the energies are shifting, and what do you see with that coming up?
Gosh, I love so much of what you just said. One thing I want to come back to before kind of moving into this transition is you were talking about kind of this evolution of our mind. And that is such a huge part of what we've been working with. So again, with Shadow Sagittarius, with the South Node there, with opportunities to get stuck in something, that's the mind kind of ceasing its growth because it's become too fixed to a truth, too fixed to one lens of viewing and understanding the world. And so that North Node in Gemini basically says the most growth comes from an empty cup mindset, from completely clearing our minds so that we can be open to growth of our minds, so that we can evolve the lens through which we see the world, welcome in new perspectives that can help us continue growing. Again, our mental capacity, connecting to the higher mind, but through openness. And yeah, what's also interesting about Gemini is that it reminds us of the power of our thoughts, of our beliefs, of our words, and our ability to really craft new narratives just by changing our minds, just by changing the stories that we repeatedly tell ourselves and tell others. It's reminded us that we can craft new narratives that have the potential to completely change the world and change our lives. And so that said, I feel like there's this really kind of exciting crossroads that we're at right now with the upcoming eclipse season, in part because the first eclipse we have is going to be on this Taurus Scorpio axis, so kind of welcoming in this new energy. But the second eclipse is going to be a total solar eclipse on December 4th, and that one will be in Sagittarius, a new moon in Sagittarius associated with our current south node. And so we really are at this transitional point right now where we don't have two eclipses on the same axis. We have two eclipses on different axes. And so there is this really big energetic shift happening right now. But we're not done with the old. We're kind of getting a sneak peek into what's to come, but we still have some work to do with this Gemini Sagittarius axis. That said, I sense that right now, what we have the opportunity to do is leverage kind of the open-mindedness, but also the word magic of Gemini, to really be able to craft new narratives about the feminine, bringing in that Taurus energy, and especially the feminine form. So Taurus is a very embodied energy, and really brings us into kind of embodiment of the feminine through matter. And so when we think about Taurus, she's like the earth mother. And we tend to think about Mother Earth and how we can care for Mother Earth when we move into these Taurus energies. But all human form, our bodies, all matter is kind of this reflection of the earth, and learning to be in our bodies and love our bodies and write again new stories with this transition from Gemini about our bodies, about the feminine, about the goddess, is a really big part of liberating the feminine, which is, I think, going to be a big energy in 2022 when the North Node officially is in Taurus and is making all of these exciting aspects with Uranus, the great awakener, the great liberator. And so there's a lot of this potential, again, to work with this Gemini energy right now to start thinking about what are those new earth stories, what are the new narratives, the new definitions that we want to have around the feminine. What are the new values that we want to start speaking into existence? Values being a Taurus word. So we really have the potential right now to use our minds and our voices to start kind of ushering in this new era. At the same time, with this Sagittarius energy on the South Node transitioning into Scorpio on the South Node, I think there's a really big opportunity to start rethinking and reevaluating our beliefs around power, especially beliefs that see power, a Scorpio word, as a zero-sum game and tell us that power is limited and that in order for others to gain power, we must lose power, instead of seeing power as this unlimited source, as something that we all have, that we all contain, that can't be lost, and that has the potential to grow. So we're releasing these old, fixed, limiting mindsets about power, especially beliefs that try to tell us that fear and hatred are greater powers than love, which would be more Taurus's power. Taurus is ruled by Venus, the goddess of love. And so I think what we're going to be really working with is these old, oppressive, limiting definitions of power, and moving into new definitions of power that lead everybody into their own power, that lead to more of a collective, global empowerment versus old systems of power that inherently need some people to be oppressed for and disempowered for others to hold power. So I think that's going to be kind of some of the big shifts we're working with. And again, these beliefs are just beliefs. That's Sagittarius. They're not necessarily hard and fast facts. And so if we can change our beliefs about these things, change our stories about them, then we really have the potential to move into a very different new era, a very different new energy, and a new level of consciousness with this big shift we're experiencing.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I think exactly, we're also, after the eclipse, almost leaving, we'll be leaving the Scorpio month and going into Sagittarius. And I feel like Scorpio month is kind of intense and a great time to work with releasing and healing and really seeing your shadows and fears and everything is coming up now. I feel like that's a theme for most people. And then when we go into, like, if we do all this beautiful work at the lunar eclipse, the full moon in Taurus, it would be so even more ease when we're going into the Sagittarius, more the weeks of being a little bit more positive and joyful. It's a little less heavy than the work that we're doing right now. And with the new moon there, it's going to be it's going to be a beautiful transition into the next year as well, which in another episode you would talk about the astrology that is coming up. And I think that what we will also do, I have to mention, on our full moon eclipse online circle and ceremony, we will get in even deeper into the astrology and the energy of the eclipse, as we are practicing on the day of the eclipse, which is very heightened energetically. And there's goddesses involved. You also do goddess astrology, which is so beautiful, and I really loved when you did the reading for me. So we will incorporate goddesses into the session and into the meditation, because that is one aspect of the divine, of the manifested world. So it's going to be a great way, if you are interested in connecting with the divine feminine, we will incorporate that. And the moon is, of course, also a goddess in itself. So it's going to be great. And something that we also, both of us, love and that we will be sharing is a tapping practice to really feel into where we are right now individually, and to really have a form of release or a form of healing that is so important for us to do now as we go along and we create the new energy for the next upcoming months and the new year as well. I don't know what else you would like to share, Diana, for this session that we will have. I mean, now registration is open. So if you do want the early bird discount, it's going to be valid until the 17th. And then after that, it's a different pricing. So if you are curious, all the links are here in the episode, in the show notes, so you can check that out. And if you have any questions, you can connect with us, of course. And if you're not able to join live, you will be able to have the recording afterwards and still work with the energy throughout the whole weekend. Because, I mean, the eclipse energy is not just one evening. It's going to be, it's already felt maybe, and it's going to be felt a week after as well.
If not longer.
Yeah.
This is, especially with eclipses, with any, new or full moon, that energy is kind of, with us for the 6 months following, until the next new or full moon in that sign. But yes, especially with eclipses, since it's ushering in this new nodal axis, this new kind of evolutionary growth path, it's going to be felt especially strongly. And actually, I just wanted to offer for people who are interested in attending, or even just for people who are interested in kind of working with the eclipse and eclipses in general on a personal level. Looking up your north and south node, or getting a reading with an astrologer, like either of us, we both do astrology readings, can be really helpful in understanding the patterns that are coming up for you personally. So both looking at the north and south node in your own chart, because those are always kind of triggered, or the energy of them tend to be felt a bit more strongly around eclipses, because we're really being asked to grow in this major way. Also looking at where the eclipses fall in your birth chart. Are they sitting with a planet in your birth chart? So, for example, Sharon has her moon in Jupiter in Taurus, and they're both going to be sitting with this full moon lunar eclipse that's coming up. And so that's going to add this kind of extra energy to this eclipse for her, an extra energy of really releasing and opening up to something new and different. You can also look at the eclipse, the solar eclipse that happened before you were born. And that can tell you something more about kind of the qualities that need to be developed. They're often going to be linked to your north or south node, but sometimes, like people who are born, right around now, they might, or early next year, they might have their prenatal solar eclipse in Sagittarius, which is linked with this current nodal axis, but they may be born next year when the north and south node are in Taurus and Scorpio. And so for people like that, they might actually have this feeling of building a bridge between kind of the two energies or the two axes. Just thinking about people who are born in early 1985, for a lot of those folks, they're actually working with a solar eclipse that did happen in Sagittarius before the nodes moved into Taurus and Scorpio. And so just kind of knowing that can also be helpful for understanding yourself on just kind of a personal level, looking at what that energy brings into your experience. And again, also can help you understand how these eclipses may impact you personally. So both, knowing your north and south node, knowing where this eclipse is going to fall in your birth chart, and also looking at that prenatal eclipse. You can do a Google search to see when the solar eclipse was before you were born, and kind of, understanding that energy a little bit more. And again, getting support. There's lots of fantastic astrologers out there, so that can be helpful. But all of that can kind of help you prepare for either our workshop, the eclipses in general, and lots of time grounding yourself right now. This is kind of an ungrounding season in my experience, and especially working with that Taurus energy, just allowing yourself to eat good food, nourish yourself, spend time in nature, do whatever grounding practices that really help you feel connected to this earth as things are shifting cosmically, can be really helpful.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that additional information. I think that's very interesting and to look up and to understand. And our wish for this circle and this online ceremony and gathering people from all over the world will be that we definitely together, that us two can hold the space for our inner evolution and healing, which will then also translate into the people around us and in the societies that we are. So the work what we have, our spiritual practice, our sadhana, we try to do it for the highest and greatest good for all living beings and those that have been. So it's going to be really interesting. We will also, for those that want to share after the session, to do a sharing. So it's going to be interactive. And if you have questions right then, you will be able to bring it up and we will answer. So I'm really looking forward to, to our online gathering on the 19th. You can find the event both on our websites and also on Facebook. And we have all the links in the show notes for you to check out. And the early bird is up until the 17th. So you have like a week left on that. So check that out. And I want to thank you, Diana, for sharing so much amazing information and insights again with everyone who's listening.
Oh, thank you so much, Sharon. And yes, I'm really excited for this ceremony. I think it's going to be very powerful just to come together and gather in community. This Gemini North Node we're still working with is very social and really derives power and energy through connecting with others. And so I think, you know, and as we transition into Taurus, which is a slightly more self-contained sign, just remembering the power of gathering, of community, and getting to have that experience together next week, I think will be such a great way to, to kind of see what we've learned and how we've developed and grown, and coming together to make plans to continue to drive positive change collectively next year. So I'm very excited for this. I'm so excited to do this with Sharon. She's just such a powerful healer and woman. And I really am looking forward to seeing some of you there. Thank you for listening to us today. I hope
Thank you so
helpful.
much. Yeah, thank you so much to everyone. And thank you, Diana, again.